the fourth day in which we have plenty of events, plenty of plenary sessions, as you already saw in the program of the Congress. Today we gather here for a special event, an event dedicated to assisted reproductive technologies. A masterclass which is today coordinated by our good friend, PhD student Alexandra Huidu. I'm sure that you know Alexandra from a different position. You know Alexandra from the position of moderator, host of Lumen events. You already know her like that, but today you will find many things about her. You'll find different things about her if you didn't know already. Dreaming of Immortality, Assisted Reproductive Technologies and Biotechnologies. A masterclass which will be held by PhD Alexandra Huidu, which is doing her research within Doctoral School of Sociology, University of Oradea, and Grigore, Popa, University of Medicine and Pharmacy, Iasi, Romania. What you should know about Alexandra is that she is actually the first author and first researcher from Romania who in 2009 wrote a monography with the subject on the subject of medical assisted human reproduction on biotechnologies and compared law. She is member of the Romanian Association of Bioethics and the International Association of Bioethics, the World Association in the field. Her main areas of interest are medical assisted human reproduction, status of human embryo, stem cell research, genetic engineering, research ethics on human subjects, which she approaches from an interdisciplinary perspective, meaning legally, sociologically, and bioethically perspectives. As I previously said, she's the author of the book, Medically Assisted Human Reproduction, The Ethics of Incrimination versus Biological Ethics, Compared Law Study. This book is published within Lumen Scientific Publishing House from Iași, Romania in 2009. This book was also revised and edited and republished in 2017. She's also author of several studies and articles in the field of the above mentioned research areas. And not continuing any further with her description, I will invite her to give her speech, her knowledge related to the assisted reproductive technologies and biotechnologies. Her first part of the title is quite exciting, Dreaming of Immortality. Alexandra, welcome. It's nice having you here, both as a researcher and friend and colleague. We are very pleased and very excited to listen to you.
Hello, Anna. Hello, dear colleagues. Hello, dear friends. I'm very excited to be here. And I will start because Anna said that the first part of the title is exciting. I would like to start by explaining why I chose this title for today's masterclass. So, Dreaming of Immortality, I said. Well, it will not be about philosophical approaches of assisted reproductive technologies or biotechnologies, as some might think after reading the title. We will talk bioethics, sociology, and a little bit of law regarding these aspects. And although bioethics does raise fundamental questions about what it is to be human, the condition of the human species when faced with technological developments, the limits of knowledge, I will focus on bioethics and sociology and ask a basic question and preferably try to answer it. This question is, why do we do what we do? Well, let's put this question aside for a couple of minutes and establish a few basics first. We often read in the scientific news section of newspapers about things like a woman over 60 years old gave birth to twins through in vitro fertilization. A baby was born from a 20-year-old frozen embryo. A couple who couldn't have babies because the wife suffered, I don't know, from ovarian cancer was delivered by a woman who offered to carry the pregnancy as a surrogate mother. A woman gives birth to her son or daughter in memory of her dead husband 5 years after his death by implanting a frozen embryo the couple had previously conceived or by using the husband's frozen sperm. I am sure you recollect reading such titles in newspapers, magazines. While reading such headlines, we cannot help but wonder, is it natural to give birth when you are over 60 just because technology can help you do that? What is natural anymore? Doesn't natural mean to be able to live long enough, at least in order to raise your children until they become adults and are independent? Or can we separate the birthing role of the mother from her social and emotional role in raising the child? Now, you could say that actually mothers sometimes die of various causes before their children become adults. So to die from old age just because you gave birth at 60 doesn't seem to be all that different from the situation when the mother dies of other causes. Then again, let's move forward. Should we be allowed to freeze human life in liquid nitrogen and bring babies to this world after tens of years, maybe after their own biological parents have already died, and to do that just because we can? Then again, being orphaned doesn't necessarily mean having a bad or unfulfilled life that's not worth living. And as some bioethicists say, as long as the life you have is preferable to not being born at all, then this should not be an ethical issue. Now, let's take surrogate motherhood, for example, which means carrying the pregnancy for another couple or a person. And I don't know, when reading about surrogate motherhood at first, that somehow made me think and remember the axolotl tanks of the Tlay-Laksu people that the writer Frank Herbert described in his well-known novel Dune. And I was thinking about the fact that the human capacity to reproduce becomes lately not an end in itself, but a means to an end. And I thought of the sci-fi literature in the field, and I was thinking, oh my God, we are actually living that future described in sci-fi novels. So why can't people simply accept the boundaries of life as they are anymore? Well, it seems that today's society can't simply accept mortality anymore. And so we come back to our original questions. Why do we do what we do? In the older days, the life of humans was much simpler because they knew that they came into this world, strived with the hardships of life, and eventually died. Death is a scary thought, of course. Psychologists say that it is because we fear the unknown, because of the fact that we do not know what is out there after we die, or as a matter of fact, if there is something out there at all after we die. Therefore, humans tend to cling to what they know from this life, and what they know is the current reality, which objects they can touch with a flesh and bone, fragile body that they put to work for the best of their abilities, with emotions and reasons that make life at least interesting, if not beautiful, with other people like them who do exactly the same. So because they know what this existence is like, just because they cannot get a grip of what comes next, now they tend to cling to what they know. And they hope they stick around for as long as possible. Now, this is how dreaming of immortality begins. But for the people of old who did not have technology at their disposal, immortality could basically be obtained in two ways. Now, the first was spiritual enlightenment, a path that actually proved to be a bit absconded and impossible to follow for most humans. So they socially constructed and accepted an alternate way to obtain immortality. And socially, it was thought that a person can obtain immortality through their children and their children's children. Therefore, through parts of them that will survive after they themselves are long dead, through people who will remember them and carry on their legacy, whatever that may be. But this survival through others, without any personal experience of the future after death, without any guarantee that future generations will remember them, that their grandsons won't forget them, seemed not to be good enough for humanity. So we strove further, trying to find ways that could prolong our lives. Firstly, by treating illness. Secondly, by preventing illness.
Just a moment. You are making some noises because you are moving, and there is a continuous noise while you are presenting. So
can you hear me now?
Yes, we are hearing you, but when you are moving, there is a noise that goes over your speech.
Okay, let's try to fix this.
Thank you.
This better? Okay, well, I should cut my hair then, I think. Maybe I would look good too. I don't know, I'll try it. Okay, so I was talking about treating and preventing illness as a way to prolong our lives, right? So until at one point, technology evolved so far that we managed to create humans outside the wombs of a woman. And by creating life outside the body, we didn't have access to the very beginnings of life. Now we have access to that very moment of creation, and we can study it in ways that were unattainable when the baby was conceived inside the woman's womb. We realized that we can take embryos now apart cell by cell, if we needed to, study their cells, the way they grew, their properties, their structure. We thus found out about the existence of stem cells, cells that can become any cell of the body, skin, bone, brain, ova, sperm, replacing any injured part of the human body's complex mechanism, if we were to grow organs out of them. So we found out the structure of the human genome and realized that some of our genes were exactly the same as the genes of other species. And thus we began to wonder if we could not mix such genes in order to prevent or cure diseases in humans. It is what we now call chimeras scientifically. What else did we find out after creating life outside of the woman's womb, after creating embryos in vitro? We found out about apoptose, the programmed death of cells, as it is called, about the fact that human cells are actually programmed to die and for others to take their place, so that our body is constantly regenerated until this process is no longer possible and we die. Well, we first believed that by controlling apoptose, we could find the way to immortality. Therefore, we wanted to know how we could make apoptose go on forever. Therefore, this is how we found out about the existence of telomeres, some tiny fragments attached to the DNA strings that decline in number every time that DNA replicates, therefore making the resulting cells less resistant to external degrading factors. And by this, we found out the reason why we get old. And we find out that not only do we get old, but also our body degenerates as we get older and older. So suddenly humanity was able to, to decline the two ways to immortality that I described above, enlightenment or having children, and began to focus on prolonging life as it was for each and every person during their own lifetime. But just prolonging life wasn't enough. It had to be a quality life, therefore a happy life that would be worth living. Because if you are old and your body fails you and you are ill and can no longer enjoy the things in life that you hold dear, then life may not be worth living to you at all. So for immortality to be complete, humans needed not only a longer lifespan, but a healthy one in young, able, and strong bodies. So humanity began to toy with genetics. Let's go to the headlines of the newspapers again and see what titles we can remember from there. Let's see, from the last 10 years. Who hasn't heard about Dolly the sheep? Okay, so the first clone ever. A sheep who died prematurely because, as it turned out, its telomeres were degrading much faster than in an original member of its species. It would be the same in humans if we were to grow a clone. So genetics was the key after all, in the end, but before making life-size human beings or clones, scientists began to take it one step at a time. What they did first, they thought to solve the problem of genetic diseases by extracting the genes that gave that diseases from the DNA of the person. Now, if a couple had such a problem, they could refrain from conceiving naturally and could opt for making in vitro fertilization if you were infertile, but to conceive it safely, even if you weren't infertile. So if you found out that your baby could have a genetic marker that could turn into a serious disease when your baby was born, then even if you were a fertile couple, you could opt to make IVF in order to have a healthy baby. How does that work? If the problem was about diseases that were only transmitted between women descendants or male descendants, let's say, we found out that we can actually exchange the gender of the embryos created in vitro. We could alter their gender through sex selection techniques in order to ensure that the resulting child would be the right sex and not get the disease. Now, from here on to selecting the gender of future children, just because people could do it, it's just one step. And such cases did become a reality. Just having a baby of your own didn't seem to be good enough anymore. The perfect family came to be a possibility. What is a perfect family? Now, if people believe that their perfect family meant having a boy instead of a girl or a girl instead of a boy, they could just make IVF and sex selection and have it, their perfect family. And then from the perfect family to the perfect child, there is only one more boundary to cross: the healthiest child possible. Any parent's dream. Now, possible through genetic engineering, followed by genetic editing, because we managed to map the human genome and we know where to find potential illness inside this genome. Which debut of the disease is in the early stages of life, which debut of the disease is in the later stages of life, and we can eliminate such disease. And we can also make our children perfectly adapted aesthetically through what is called aesthetic genetic engineering, and give them blue eyes and blonde long hair, for example, and they would have problems with their microphones during conferences. So that they don't suffer social rejection, we will give them those physical features. And if we began to tailor our babies, why not make them geniuses who can become wonders in mathematics, or if we wanted to in physics, depending on the parent's choice. Now, the human species would evolve much faster to a brighter new future if we had perfectly healthy geniuses running around, as if current evolution wasn't fast enough. Now, then doctors, other doctors from other fields, thought to solve the organ problem for patients who needed transplants. So they thought to use stem cells in order to grow such organs in the laboratory. Then they realized that there was a problem with histocompatibility, and that some organs might be rejected by the host organism, or that the organs could develop functioning problems after transplant. So they realized that we could surpass that if we were to take, I don't know, what was good from other species' genomes and put it into our own genome. One headline in one paper, if I remember correctly, stated that in order to obtain histocompatibility, a chimeric liver was made by crossing human cells and pig cells, because it seems that pigs are extremely genetically compatible to humans. So chimeras, meaning human cells and cells from other species intertwined until there is no way to know in the organ which is which, became to be a medical reality. But the best way to ensure histocompatibility, scientists said, and again moved further, was to create a being as close to the genetic makeup of the patient himself by using his own gametes and gametes from other species to create a new source of organs. And this is how we are talking about hybrids, meaning fertilized human or animal ova by human or animal sperm. Now, amazing possibilities were brought to the forefront by genetic engineering. Of course they were. Let's say a somatic cell of a male patient could be taken, transformed by ways of genetic engineering into an ova that would then be fertilized by the sperm of the same patient in order to create a human embryo. Now, this technique is called cellular reproduction. Then stem cells from that embryo would be used in order to grow organs. It's like having your own organ factory, just for your own. It's your own body that produces new organs. So we question ourselves, and if we don't, maybe we should. We question if this is the way to do things. Do we need perfect children? Do we really want to genetically alter humans to make them more resistant to diseases? Or is it just the natural way of things that new diseases will eventually turn up, maybe much worse than the ones we currently try to eradicate? And because we toyed with the human genome, we would have lost our natural ability to resist to such diseases. Yet, solving the genetic disease problem and the organ transplant problem would definitely solve major crises in healthcare systems, especially where enormous funds are being spent to treat such illnesses. Then social welfare systems would largely profit, scientists say, because as long as a person has an illness, then their capacity to work is diminished. And therefore, not only their capacity to work is diminished, but also the person may be prone to other disabilities. And such disabilities might need assistance, and assistance from specialized personnel, therefore social work programs of intervention. Again, it means spending money that could be spent for ensuring the evolution of the species altogether, and not for just treating the less able of our species. And if all people would be healthy and would live longer, then bioethicists ask themselves, will this earth be able to feed us all? Will we have enough space on this planet in the end? And then others asked, are we allowed to touch the human genome? Isn't this playing God? Now, I don't want to get into religious bioethics, because this is a topic that if you do go into, now you need to take your time and take it one argument at a time. But from that part of bioethics, I will just take a few ideas. And those ideas basically turn into 2-3 basic questions. Are hybrid embryos still humans, or are they another species? For example, if such an embryo would develop into a fully grown adult being, would it or he be human or not? Would he or it be self-conscious? If he or it would be self-conscious, that means it should be a he and not an it. So are we at all responsible for creating self-conscious new species? If such species haven't appeared in the natural way of evolution on Earth, should we create them just because we can? Toying with the human genome, intertwining it with other species just to solve the problem of illness, won't that expose us to illnesses that could cross boundaries between species? We're in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, and one theory states that COVID-19 is an illness that crossed the boundaries between species, although it shouldn't have. So won't we be prone to other illnesses from other species as well? Now, some bioethicists say that in order not to make mistakes, not to injure the human species in a manner that might lead to its own destruction, and use only the benefits of science while controlling the negative effects it might have, we should pay more attention to the moral development of the human species. If such moral development cannot be attained through normal evolution, and some bioethicists and some philosophers say that it cannot, then it should be speeded up by using what else than genetic engineering again. Now, maybe what we should wonder is if it is really necessary to do all these things. And again, why do we do what we do? Honestly, I believe that it seems for us as a species, it is not only necessary, but it is somehow unavoidable. And therefore, we seem to be unable to stop because this is how we were created. Why I say that? Because I'm speaking about instincts. What we have, first of all, is the survival instinct. And that survival instinct tells us that I myself, as a part of the human species, I need to survive. I know I cannot survive forever. Therefore, what I need to do secondary is ensure that my species survives. Therefore, another instinct kicks in, and that's the reproductive instinct. So I need to reproduce. It is not just a social need that I have. It is not just a spiritual urge. It is not just my emotions about everything that maternity or paternity, parentality in general implies, but it's also a need, a biological need to reproduce in order to make sense of my survival instinct, to produce future generations of my species. So this is why if I do not have children, because I cannot have children, I will do anything in my power to have such children. Therefore, it is an urge that we have as a human species to follow up on what science can provide in order to have children. Therefore, all the techniques, I was talking about IVF, but all the techniques included in medically assisted human reproduction, which are a lot, and there is no time to go into all the details right now, but there are a lot of other medically assisted human reproductive technologies that can be used by infertile patients. All these techniques are made available, and we tend to use them because we have this reproductive instinct. And then what else we have? We have the self-preservation instinct, the self-defense instinct. This instinct makes me want to stay alive no matter what. And by staying alive, I mean at first staying healthy, because if I'm not healthy, then the probability that I should remain alive for a long time will be, of course, drastically diminished. So if I want to stay alive, again, I will have this urge to go towards technology if I have a medical problem. Of course, I will go to genetic engineering. I don't want to have Alzheimer's at 50. If I can stop this from happening and I can be a normal functioning parent for my child until I am 80 and not until 50, and genetic engineering is available for me, of course I will do it. If someone tells you you have cancer, liver cancer, and you're going to be dead in 5 months, and the doctor comes and tells you, don't worry, I have a pig human liver especially grown for you. It's totally histocompatible. You will take that liver when faced with death. And because we have these instincts, we have the tendency to make it so that the world makes sense to us. Of course, we are scared by the technological development. Of course, we do not know its entire implications for now and for future generations, but we want to make sense of it and be able to use it because our instincts urge us to do it. So what we do is we put these pieces of technology into the bigger puzzle of life, and we use concepts in order to do that. Let's say if I am the mother of my child, I conceived the child, I was pregnant with the child, I gave birth to the child, and now I'm raising the child. But in case I couldn't give birth, in case I couldn't conceive, all those stages before raising the child, and I would go to somebody else and ask another woman, please carry the pregnancy for me, I would go to a surrogate mother. Now, we don't call that person a mother per se because she just carries the child during pregnancy. Or is she a mother? Can a baby have 3, 4, 5 mothers depending of the moment when each of them entered this reproductive process. So we begin to use concepts that can describe this reality we are currently living. And it's like a race to invent concepts like surrogate mother. Have you ever thought about having surrogate father? What is that? Well, men can give birth, so we cannot have a surrogate father. But then again, your father can also be your brother or yourself, depending on what you want to be, a clone or a product of solo reproduction, or a product of a synthetic embryo. So after inventing concepts, our mind is at ease because we now know how to name these realities. And while being at ease, we begin to understand realities through the eyes of these concepts that we use. And when we meet somebody, let's say a child who was born through IVF by a surrogate mother, and that child might tell us, this is my social mother and this is my surrogate mother, we understand the implications, but do we accept them? How far do we go for accepting these implications? Now, acceptance is a totally different subject, and it is not the subject for today. For today, the subject was dreaming of immortality and how to attain it through medically advanced technologies. And in the end, I am not the one who has to answer the question, why do we do what we do? Because this question should be asked by each and every one of us. And for the end of this lecture, I just want to say that I hope that before you go for advanced medical technologies, if you ever need them, ask yourself first, why do you do what you do? Thank you very much for listening. I am open to questions now.
Thank you, Alexandra Huidu, for your presentation. You actually brought us into such a sensitive topic, and I'm sure that one of the participants here present with us, which is Antonio Sandu, is very, very impatient to ask questions or to bring his ideas in as a follow-up of your lecture. Professor Sandu?
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra, for this wonderful speech. It's one of the greatest speech I heard about these kind of topics on bioethics and on the special side of bioethics, because for many of us, bioethics is what should do and how and the relation between the medical profession and the people and so on. But it's this kind of bioethics that raise questions about what humans are. And this becomes a bioethic topic that was a philosophical topic since the philosophy began in ancient Greek and, of course, in ancient China or in ancient Egypt or in ancient India. But we know philosophy starts in Greece, and so remained to Greece. But this is important because the new bioethics become more permeable to philosophy. Because we ask questions, what are we as human? So it's the questions that you rise here, and I remember they will be raised in a spiritual way. You say about illumination, about enlightenment. And you say, well, these people, they were born in this way. Maybe a chimera. Does they have consciousness? And if it does, and they are a complete different species, could we say we create gods? because they are perfect, and maybe have 3-4 meters in size or something like this. That is the classical descriptions of gods. Maybe they could have 4 arms and 10 arms, and we go to the descriptions of gods and say, well, we can create gods in this moment, this genetic engineering and CRISPR technology, editing the gene, and synthetic biology. So this problem that you bring to us is an important problem, not only in ethics, in bioethics, in philosophy, but in spirituality, but in it's a reflection on what divinity is. Because if we can create gods, can we go further? Can we create, for example, a people that are connected to internet and they have all knowledge in the human race, in human databases, and they are omniscient and could link us to the computer and are ubiquitous, present everywhere? Can we become artificial God? Yes, of course we can. So these questions should be asked, and it's better that Alexandra did in this Congress, in World Human Congress. Humanity should ask, is it possible to change everything in our life? And the answer could be yes. If it's possible, is it good? And only ethics should answer, and this answer should be totally different from the previous answer. Prepare or unprepared for future. I quote Julian Savulescu and Pearson's book. But maybe we are completely unprepared not only for these changes, but for that anthropological singularity that we live in. Not because we can become gods, but then many of us already are. And we do not know. And this is a new topic in philosophy, in bioethics. And because Alexandra asked many questions, I dare to ask the questions for Alexandra. If you are a god or a goddess, how you should behave as a god or goddess in this new reality? How you or I or everyone else should, this godhood, need a new behavior, because of course need a new ethics. But could we understand that is new behavior, new psychology, new? What you believe about this? What you believe about this?
Oh, you know very well what I believe about this, because we've talked about this hundreds of times. And now I will say it publicly. We will both say it publicly. Humanity is not prepared to shift paradigm just yet. Meaning that we look at ourselves as end products of a God. This is what I believe. And we need to look at ourselves, if we want to use these technologies, not as end products of an already existing God, but as beginners of life, stemmers of life. Because
but God in Bible, and not only in Bible, there is a fragment, there is a passage and say, you are God for every person. And Jesus himself said, you are God and the Son of God, and just you live as anyone else. So Jesus himself said, you are God, but you don't remember. So maybe it's time to remember that we have been created as gods already.
Well, I cannot professionally, scientifically and professionally go into that, because I am not a theologist. Therefore, I cannot move to a field of knowledge that is not particular to my skills. But
I'm not a theologist myself, but of course I'm a philosopher. you are a sociologist and a lawyer. So let's be
Therefore,
I
will let's be a team. Okay, so from my view, I think that sociologically speaking, people are unaware. Remember, Antonio, 15 years ago, when we were talking about these things, we would get these reactions from other scientists who would say, this is sci-fi, what you guys are talking about. They thought of it as sci-fi. 10 years later, the things we were speaking about then became an actual reality. So it proved that it wasn't sci-fi anymore. But as a lot of people were unaware at that time, now scientists became aware during the last decade, 15 years, more aware than they used to be, but the large masses of population are still not aware. You are going to tell me that this particular type of science is not made by the large masses of population, but of some chosen few who know exactly what they're doing. But these chosen few need to be given limits. Who establishes these limits? Ethicists. Who enforces these limits? The law. Who makes the law? People from parliaments. Who are these people? They are not scientists. They are not the chosen few who know exactly what they're doing. So awareness should be raised for public policy.
So maybe
we are somewhere in a void.
Maybe Plato has some rights when say philosopher should be the king. So maybe he does have right, maybe he doesn't. The expert should govern in a way. So maybe in the near future we will need two sides of the parliament, one with the experts and one with lay people, people that are on all classes and social conditions and so on. But then maybe there is a special request for those, and it's not only in our country but everywhere. We need to be ruled by those who know what, to know ethics. So philosophy and sociology and law should become an alliances in new ethics of life. That's my opinion, starting from what you said, and that's what I try to do by working together with you and with Anna and with Elena and with all other of us, and Bianca, of course, and all other of us in Lumen team. That's just because we are at Lumen Congress when we have 20 years of doing this day by day, and make sometimes miracle, a little miracle or small miracle or great miracles for us, not for everyone, but for us to become daily activity.
Just to make it sure for everybody, to make it clear for everybody, scientists don't want to rule. You wouldn't like to rule. I mean, come on, admit it. You wouldn't like to be out there and rule, but you would love to be consulted at times because you know what you're speaking about. So this is what scientists want. They want to be consulted and they want to be part of the decisional process, not to make the actual decision or enforce them. This is for other specialists in their field, but maybe the ones who know what they're speaking about should be consulted before something is made available to the huge uninformed masses of population. I completely relate to that.
Not make politics, but doing policy. Doing policies, not politics.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Alexandra. Thank you for the debate you initiated, and thank you, Professor Sandu, for the manner in which you actually emphasized her speech after the presentation. Thank you for all your contributions, and for the moment, we would like to invite you to the next sessions that will be held starting with 2:00 p.m. Bucharest time. Alexandra, Huidu, thank you for your masterclass once again, and hope we will see you again in this format. We like you better like this. Even you're a great host, a great moderator within Lumen events. I must confess I like you better like this. A scientist, a specialist that wants to understand better the world that we are living in. Thank you, Alexandra, once again. Thank you, Professor Sandu, for...
Thank you, Anna, for moderating. Thank you, Lumen, for having me. And I can't wait to see you, Anna Frunze, in your masterclass tomorrow.
Thank you.